Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this week's Way Forward Workshop Leader Lunch Break. It is great to see some faces we have not seen in a long time. Welcome. We're thrilled today to welcome Eric Gordon. Eric took the helm of Cleveland Metropolitan School District in June of 2011 after serving as the district's chief academic officer for 4 years and after years of education. He hit the ground running and almost immediately embarked on crafting a masterful and complex plan for the future of education, which we all know now as the Cleveland Plan. The plan was truly groundbreaking in the significant collaborations that resulted in the most comprehensive education plan ever drafted. His groundbreaking work continued and is further evidenced in the selection of Cleveland as a Say Yes to Education city. The results of his leadership are impressive. Almost 30% increase in high school graduation rate, a growth in K-3 literacy rates, and an over 70% increase in enrollment in high quality preschools. He's a national hero too. He's been recognized nationally as a top urban educator, the most coveted prize for urban superintendents, which he received in 2016. And he chaired the Council of Great City Schools, an organization that serves 70 large urban districts. And we recognize him here at home with multiple awards, including Cleveland Magazine's Most Interesting People, Inside Business Power 100, and Smart Business Top 50 Award. His Twitter account often says, "I am honored to lead." He is a mentor to so many students, and he asks us to think about the 30,000+ students that he serves as our kids. He's also a proud alum of Leadership Cleveland. I've often said that the jobs I least wanted during the pandemic were that of a college president and a school superintendent. So thank you, Eric, and I turn it over to you.
Thanks, Marianne, and good afternoon, everyone. Nice to see so many friends on the call and to meet new people as well. Rachel and Marianne graciously gave me about 10 minutes just to give you a sense of what's going on in our world. And then we'll take about 15 minutes on our lunch break to enter any questions you have. I have no filter, so please ask away. My mother says she should have named me Frank. It would have been a lot easier. So please ask what you'd like to know and I'll do the best to get to them. So how are we doing? I would tell you that this is truly a tale of two cities. COVID and operating schools in COVID has been the single hardest thing that I think my educators and I have ever done. And I think while many people and organizations are sort of back to business as normal, lots of people are still teleworking or using other methods. Teachers can't. We have to be at school. We have to be in front of our children. We have to be at full strength. And so teachers and other educators are really feeling the stresses of that. We are mitigating COVID every single day. And, you know, I would argue we're doing a pretty effective job with it, but that is very taxing on our people. We are not exempt from the hiring challenges. So we have, we're hiring in nearly every position, which means that where you need to have a full-time health professional, we're looking for health professionals. Where you need security, we're looking for security, substitute teachers, you name it, we're looking at it. And that means that our educators are truly going above and beyond to keep us operating day by day. One of the things that I think you can be very proud of the Cleveland Metropolitan School District is from the outside, it is operating every day. We are not seeing some of the kinds of disruptions that we've seen not only in Northeast Ohio and the state, but across the country. So we have had peer districts that have had to go to remote school because they couldn't get their kids to school. They didn't have enough bus drivers. We have managed to keep our buses on the road and get kids to school. We have schools that have had to flip because they don't have enough substitutes and they can't run. We have had 3 experiences where we had to do that, three days. But we have a triaging system where people from central office go out and teach to make sure classes keep running. And so, so the tale of two cities starts with just how incredibly difficult this year has been. People are taxed. You see it everywhere you go. our kids and adults are no different. And we're seeing the same stressors that we're seeing in the adult workforce showing up with kids. You're seeing that in neighboring schools that have closed because of fights. And we've been struggling with different kinds of student behaviors, different attendance behaviors than we had pre-pandemic as well. So the first side of the tale really is just this very, very difficult day-to-day operation of our schools. But the flip side of the tale is this really beautiful story of what our educators are accomplishing and things we can be really, really proud of. Just today, I just left our East Professional Center where we're having a 2-day college, Cleveland Goes to College fair for all of our juniors and seniors and their parents. Students were walking around with 75 colleges recruiting our kids right here in Cleveland. And, you know, I'm seeing behavior changes in really healthy ways. And so I was looking for kids who were kind of not going to tables, didn't have anything in their bag. And I would walk up to the kids and was ready to say, you know, are you a little nervous to say hello, or can you not find what you want? And before I would get to them, they would drift up to the table and get started. And that's a different behavior than we would have years ago, where it was like a middle school dance and you had to peel them off the wall to get them to participate. And years ago, we couldn't have attracted 75 colleges to come talk to our kids, and we have. We're actually from 5 to 8 this evening, opening it up to all of Northeast Ohio. And so now, instead of our kids going to Northeast Ohio's college fair, Northeast Ohio has come into Cleveland's college fair. And that's a sign of the great work that our leaders and our educators have been doing. A few other things that are super exciting is we offered innovative learning accelerators to our teachers. And this is a way for teachers to do innovative things with their kids that bring joy and adventure to their learning. And you could imagine, as tired as everybody is, that people wouldn't do it. But we got a number of applications of really exciting things. And so just one example, our students at Halley School, the teacher got an accelerator, and they are going to design and build floats for the Halley Holiday Community Parade. And so they're in the design space right now. We're bringing the CMSD float to them. They're going to study it and study others. They're going to order the materials. They're going to build their floats. And then they're going to actually have a holiday parade, which will be their demonstration of learning. How did the learning go? Were they able to achieve it? And so on November 17th, if you have nothing else to do, come watch our parade and see our kids, their learning at work. We are deep into the complete transition to one-to-one technology. So we had the survival technology last year, but now we're actually going back to schools and swapping out devices and making sure that every student has the individual device that they need. And our teachers have flipped homework from paper and low-tech homework to high-tech homework, where it's loaded in their Schoology mirror classroom. And that allows that if a student has to be out for quarantine or they're sick or what have you, they can still keep up with their class by logging into Schoology and seeing what their class is doing and accessing their content. That's game-changing for us in a district that didn't have that technology before the pandemic. We're about to make a big announcement on November 15th, and I actually see Andrea Vullo here, for our 6th through 12th grade career planning work called PACE, From Here to Career, where every 6th through 12th grader will experience a number of experiences that help them be really thoughtful about what they're interested in and what careers they want. And over time, as we build this out, this is our next Say Yes to Education. It's the next collective impact model. We have over 75 employers already engaged. We have over 100 individuals, 40 plus organizations, some of whom are on this call today. And our kids will, over the course of that 6 years, get to test out different kinds of careers and start honing in on what they like and what they don't like. And so, you know, for example, often when we say to kids, well, maybe you should think about the medical profession, they say, well, I don't like blood. And they cross the whole profession off because they think doctor and nurse, and they don't understand instrument sterilization or medical coding or running the offices or the legal functions in health profession or the many other things. And so we now have employers like the clinic and like UH who can say to their young professionals, people of color, women, non-traditional roles, hey, use your phone and tape a quick little vignette saying, hey, I'm Andrea Vullo, and this is what I do, this is my job, and kids will have through their phone access to this database of Clevelanders doing jobs that our kids can learn and explore. And then after they do those things, they get to take a little quick survey that says, did I like this? A thumbs up, a thumbs down, and it'll start steering them towards more things they like and less things they don't. And so if I take an interest survey and I find out I'm an introvert, it's probably going to tell me you're not very likely going to be interested in sales. Let's go look at something else. And so we're really excited about the career pathway work that is building on the work we've done in our high schools over the last several years. We are also converting our high school media centers from the old-fashioned libraries of yesterday to much more like the Cleveland Public Libraries are today, a community college and career hub that is staffed before and after school and during the school day, where kids can go and hang out and work on a project. They can work on their college essay. They can print materials. They can study those careers. They can sign up for clubs and activities. We've expanded K-8 so we've added a 0 period or a 9th period, and we're offering more art, music, and phys ed at every K-8 school citywide. And this week launched out of school time activities with Say Yes as our partner in every building starting this week as well. And so I say that to say I'm going to pause here so we can get to some Q&A, but to say that the operational issues of functioning in a pandemic have never been harder than what I've experienced this year. And if I'm experiencing it, you know that every teacher and educator is, and we need to continue to offer them the space and grace and the thanks for what they're doing every day in probably the only industry that maybe other than medical and restaurants that are full back at work without choice, right? But at the same time, know that our educators have lifted all of these and so many more things for our kids and community to help us focus on 3 ways of closing that learning gap. So it is finishing the unfinished learning. It's engaging in these more problem-based oriented things where kids can really dig into a complex task that they enjoy and then demonstrate their learning. And then out of school time activities to get re-engaged, reconnected, re-socialized with friends and their community. I think the last thing I'll take the opportunity to say, because I'm just about at 12:15, is the pandemic is not over. And people are treating this and treating kids as if the pandemic is over and everything should be fine, and it's not. The shutdown is over. And so the American Rescue Plan is a 3-year recovery plan for a reason. And we have to, as a community, signal that we are going to stand behind our kids, our families, and their educators over the next 3 years as we recover the 18 months of global disruption that they have experienced. And if we make the false assumption that we can just do a quick summer program or a little bit of after school tutoring and call it a day, we will not serve children well. But if we stay the course on making sure that we deeply engage kids and families over the next 3 years in these expanded learning ways, the additional tutoring, the additional out of school time programming, the additional rigorous experiences in school that really create the joy and adventure that connects us, and we stay the course, kids did not lose the ability to learn, they only lost time. And we have to make that time up very deliberately. So Marianne, I'm at 12:15. I'm going to toss it back to you and Rachel, and we can move to Q&A.
Great, Eric, thank you so much. And we've had quite a few questions come in, so we'll jump right in. Can you share a few remarks around career tech pathways and how schools like Max Hayes are faring? Have there been barriers to work-based learning experiences during the pandemic? Or on the flip side, have there been more opportunities for employer partnerships?
Yes, the answer is both. So the pandemic created barriers to the traditional ways in which employers and education work together. And it was at the very beginning of creating the PACE program that I mentioned earlier. And I will tell you, and I said it at the time, I was sure that our linking students to careers work was doomed, that it would not survive the shutdown. And partly we were leveraging that we were in the hottest employee market pre-pandemic that we had seen since the Depression, since coming out of the Depression, and that employers had a need for getting into the K-12 space like they'd never had before. And when unemployment skyrocketed, we thought that need would evaporate and people would walk away. The exact opposite happened. The advisory group that pulled together what we're now calling PACE, but the Linking Students and Careers, linked arms with the employers and found ways to take the things we were doing and turn them into virtual things. And we prototyped a lot of ways for kids to stay virtually connected. And came out of that, as I mentioned, with 75 employers already at the table, many, many more anxious to get at the table in the 4 sector partnerships, including the construction trades, advanced manufacturing, healthcare professions, and IT. Max Hayes specifically has continued. We are the only high school in Ohio that has pre-apprenticeship programs where our students graduate and go directly onto the apprenticeship bench in the trades unions. And those programs are still going strong. Our partnerships are still going strong. And in, I think in January, we're actually having the fair for our students to actually start looking for jobs on the bench as union employees coming out of high school. And again, we're the only high school in Ohio that skips the pre-apprenticeship program after high school because we're doing it in high school. So we've learned how to do a lot more virtually. We've learned how to do short touch things that have high impact, both in school and out of school, as well as deepening the internship and apprenticeship experiences.
So Eric, you touched upon the conversations around learning loss during the pandemic. Can you share a little bit more about what you're actually seeing among the students in the classroom and how teachers might be trying to help support students to be back in the classroom and maybe catch up as needed?
Yeah, we're seeing different patterns at different grade levels. First of all, we're not going to get out of a pandemic by just saying this is where a 3rd grader is supposed to be on October 27th, and so let's remediate them to death, which has always been a poor K-12 strategy, but has been often the most used. We're going to have to start with where kids are and activate their known knowledge so that they can accelerate their learning. And so a lot of what I was talking about is about how do you meet them where they are and activate what they're good at so that they can find successes and continue to excel. Saying that, the patterns we're seeing is that our young kids are a grade level behind. They didn't go to preschool and they didn't go to kindergarten. Kindergartners are back this year. Preschoolers are not. We are still actively trying to get families to put 3- and 4-year-olds back into preschool, not just my preschools, but citywide. And I actually have a meeting right after this with Pre-for-Cle. So we're seeing young learners who just simply didn't have a lot of learning. And so they are older than their learned age. And so that's teachers are saying, this is not my typical 2nd grader. Well, that typical 2nd grader went home at the end of kindergarten and hasn't been back in school until 2nd grade. And so there's that group of kids, and that means doing kind of a back up and start where they are and then work to close that gap moving forward. In the high schools, we're seeing that kids largely have the skills and abilities, but it's where they stepped in for credits. And so it's much more based on their course accrual and the credit accrual and the things they need to graduation. So you can do more things like offering credit recovery. You can offer credit flex, where students work with a teacher to complete a portion of a course rather than retake the whole course, and things of that nature. In middle school, it's kind of an all over the place because middle school kids, I would argue, were most vulnerable both by their developmental age. Middle schoolers have lower self-regulation skills just by their physical growth, and we're often the ones left to their own devices because they're old enough to take care of themselves in really tough times. And so you see middle school kids kind of all over the place. What you will see is that there are a lot of efforts around small group interventions, tutoring, and that sort of thing to close the finish gap. But again, you're going to see a lot more of the enriched experiences where students are working on complex problems that they then have to have micro lessons that they're interested in because they want to solve the problem so that they can, get that content. So just using that Hallie example of the teacher building the floats, she will be able to stop and do a lot of math and science by saying, okay, so you got to learn how to measure if you're going to build this thing. So there's going to be a lot of ways to do micro lessons that help kids achieve their goal that they're interested in achieving. So we're seeing different patterns across different age groups. Again, knowing that we have to activate kids from where they are, because and we all know this, when people start with us at a deficit, we are not motivated. But if people help us to find successes, we actually get excited by that and keep going. Kids are no different. Kids are people, and people behave in pretty predictable ways that we know we can advance in learning.
What has your absence rate looked like across the district so far this year? And is that attributed to various illnesses? And how might that compare to some of the other districts in our region?
So absenteeism has been a big surprise for everyone across the country. And I will explain it, and you will immediately, I think, understand it as soon as you hear it. So we measure how many students have missed more than 2 days in the first quarter, because we can't afford to get to 18 days absence. So 10 is our limit: 2, 5, 7, 10, 4 quarters. Usually in a typical year, we would have about 80 to 85% of our kids on track, meaning in the first quarter, they missed 2 or fewer days. During the pandemic, that was like 65%. This quarter that just ended on Friday was 65%. So it looks almost identical to the pandemic. And we didn't wait to find out at night. We saw this coming. And so we've been asking, like, what's going on? Why are kids behaving so differently? And so we actually went to my student advisory committee, which is my high school students that I go to for every problem I don't understand. And I said, tell me what is happening. I don't understand why the behavior is different than it used to be. Because it's not a matter of just doing the old interventions and it's going to fix when the behavior is completely different. So what our students told us was that the pandemic stress, mental and physical stress, they are taking more, just frankly, mental health days than they did before. They told us that was the number one. The next was not feeling supported. And for that, they meant things like their mental health, their other responsibilities, holding jobs to help their family, things like that. The third of their reasons was they're scared of getting COVID, and so they're staying home. And then their fourth was they feel kind of unmotivated or feeling lazy, kind of feel checked out, self-described. So why I think you can resonate with that is the day we did that, that was a Friday about 3 weeks ago now, was also the day that the labor statistics came out about why people aren't going back to work. And they're the exact same reasons. And so we're going to have to figure out, how do we tackle these new behaviors, in my case with students in attendance, but in our larger case with the workforce, where people are saying, I've hit my stress limit. I'm going to take mental health days. I'm not going to work. I'm going to make different choices. I'm afraid of getting COVID, so I'm going to avoid those experiences. And so we're really working to figure out, how do we counter that? To the question about the region, we are always a magnified version of the region. So yes, my peers are seeing it. They're seeing it less dramatic levels, but they're seeing it too. And so when I talk to my first string colleagues, as an example, they're seeing it, or my Ohio 8 urban peers are seeing it as well. We just see it at more magnified levels, because we have a more distressed community from other foundational factors.
So let's build on the conversations around mental health, behavioral problems, and the rise that we're seeing in the students reporting these. What supports are in place for the students who need those social emotional supports, but might not meet the criteria for available mental health services?
Yeah, so we're really fortunate in Cleveland that we started on this effort long before the pandemic. And so we kind of have a jump on this from the promotive, preventive, and early intervention space. So first of all, this year we now have a full-time health professional in every single school building. That's new for us, and we're really excited about that, because a lot of minor mental health issues can actually be handled by an RN, LPN, a trained health professional, and can be handled through family practice and getting kids into a good medical home, which we're working hard to do. Too many of my families, the emergency room is their medical home, and we're working to make that shift to a primary care provider that's coordinated through school. But we're also at the point where 75% of our schools are now Say Yes schools, which means they have a licensed social worker, which we call a family support specialist, in their school. So they have access to that person on a daily basis, full time. And that that family support specialist has access to a database. We call it the post-secondary planning system, which is loaded with the United Way 211 database, so that we have access to the complete set of services that are available in our community and they're available at school. And so they essentially serve as caseworkers to connect kids and families. We also have, for many years, had our social emotional learning curriculum in place. And so we've really been supporting that. And we have our planning center specialists, which are cool down spaces, safe spaces in our schools. Saying all that, we're seeing, again, patterns like everybody else is seeing of really disruptive behavior that seems to come from nowhere. We have neighboring schools in the region that have actually had to go remote because the schools have become so disruptive that they can't operate. We have fortunately not had to do that. But my call at 4 o'clock with my national network is focused solely on, has anybody found a way to help kids relieve this stress without it turning into these volatile experiences? And we're seeing them with adults too. And so there is this, people are stretched to their mental limits, and we've got to find ways to keep creating space and grace and because the mental health system has always been underfunded and undersupported, and it's completely overwhelmed right now.
So as you think back to this past year and a half, what has been your greatest aha moment from your experiences during the pandemic?
Oh, wow. I think for me, it's a leadership move that I think paid off way better than I expected. And I would describe it as bounded optimism and deliberate calm. So through this whole experience, every single message that I've communicated out to my kids, to my families, to our community, to my educators, I have tried, when you read it or listened to it or watched it on video, for you to hear a bounded optimism and a deliberate calm. And what I mean by that is, it's going to be okay, and here's what we're going to do. Even when I didn't know what we were going to do, right? It's going to be okay, and here's what we're going to do. I think that I knew that as an important leadership strategy. I think I didn't really understand how important that was, to just have somebody assure you that we're going to be okay, and then have something we're going to do. And I think as you look at, a wildly imperfect move through a global disruption, and when, I've had some people who are really critical of things I've done, and I said, yep, next time I'll know what to do better, right? But largely people have, even if they didn't like the decision, they've been willing to accept it because we had just a constant drumbeat of, it's going to be okay, and here's what we're going to do. Bounded optimism and deliberate calm. I think that's the lesson that I'm taking away from this. One of thousands.
For those of us on the call, what are some of the best ways that we as community supporters, those who are looking for ways for groups to volunteer, to best assist our CMSD scholars to optimize their learning experience?
Get engaged, volunteer. So we still have Say Yes going. We absolutely need people to become Say Yes mentors for the next class. That's a mentor that spends the whole 4 years with the student virtually as they go off to college. Our True to You program, which is part of it, now wrapped into our PACE work, is going to need volunteers to work with our 8th graders in all of our classrooms. We're running out of school time partnerships. So really find ways to get involved, and that's one. The other is tell our story. We have the problem as an urban school district that we are bad unless we can prove otherwise. Lots of my peers have the benefit of they are good unless they prove otherwise. Our kids and my educators are doing amazing things, and they deserve to be held up on high. And they don't deserve for people to wear a disdain for them because they happen to live in the city, they happen to be people of color, they happen to live in poverty. And so help tell our story, follow our social media, get the great word out. I'm willing to take the hits when we do stuff wrong, but I need champions that celebrate all of the beautiful, wonderful, great things that my kids do right every day.
Well, Eric, we thank you for joining us and for all you and your educators are doing to help our students and our families in our community. And I'm going to turn it back to Mary Ann.
Thank you, Rachel. Eric, we will send you some of the comments in the chat, but I just want to draw your attention to a recent one. I am proud to be a CMSD parent. Thanks for your leadership, Eric. I think that sums it all up. We are all grateful, CMSD parent or not, for your tremendous leadership through the pandemic and prior. So thank you.